Welcome. We're so glad that you've joined us for today's discussion about the 2023 AARP Community Challenge. I'm Mike Watson, Director of Livable Communities and Enterprise Lead for Livable Communities at AARP. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. We've had thousands of folks register to join us today, and we're looking forward to connecting with you throughout. Now, today we're going to cover a lot of information about the AARP Community Challenge Grant Program. This is going to include information on eligibility, the history, and more. We're also going to hear from previous grantees and, most importantly, answer many of your questions. We're really excited to get going, but before we get too much further, it's now my pleasure to introduce Nancy Lamond, Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer and Executive Vice President for Community, State, and National Affairs here at AARP.
Hello, I'm Nancy Lamond, AARP's Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer. I lead our federal and state advocacy work as well as AARP's public education and engagement efforts. 7 years ago, we created the AARP Community Challenge Grant Program to help make communities across the country great places to live for people of all ages and abilities. Since then, we've distributed $12.7 million to fund more than 1,000 quick action projects in rural, urban, and suburban communities, helping local leaders and organizations create vibrant public spaces, support community resilience, increase digital connections, enhance transportation options, and so much more. This work is critically important. By 2034, there will be more people in this country over the age of 65 than under 18. And we know that most Americans want to stay in their homes as they age. So communities need to adapt to support this aging population. And by doing that, they will create places that are great for older adults and people of all ages. We are adapting as well, making some strategic changes to the Community Challenge Program. This year, in addition to our flagship grants, we're including 2 new opportunities. First, a capacity-building micro-grant focused on neighborhood walkability and community gardens. And second, a demonstration grant for projects related to accessory dwelling units and transportation systems. Over the course of today's program, you'll learn more about the new funding opportunities, the application process, and the work of past grantees. We'll also be happy to answer your questions. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll consider applying for a grant to spark change in your community.
Now, I hope you all enjoyed hearing a bit of background about the program, along with some of the exciting new opportunities this year. I now want to take a few minutes to familiarize you with the platform that we're using for today's program, Zoom, a platform many of you are familiar with, particularly since the pandemic. But we want to go over a few features. So first, you should see the instructions for engaging in Zoom chat on the screen. This is going to allow you to send a message to everyone who's here or to specific attendees. You can use chat throughout the program for conversations. We'll also add links in this chat throughout the presentation. Second, you should also see a Q&A button on the display as well. We'll be using this feature to ask and answer your questions today. We've allotted ample time to get to your questions, but we also have several team members who will be working furiously to answer your questions in the platform as well as soon as they come in. So if you have a question, please go ahead and submit it now using the Q&A button, and you'll be able to do that throughout the program. Now finally, I also want to familiarize you with some of the accessibility features today. If you'd like to turn on closed captioning for today's event, please click on the CC button to turn on those captions. Now that we're all familiar with the platform, let's go ahead and dive into the Community Challenge. We have a pretty packed agenda today, and we're going to cover a lot of things. First, some background on AARP and why we care about livable communities and this program. Second, we'll have a discussion with some previous grantees. Third, we're going to get to answer your questions, and this is going to be the most important part of the program. And just so you know, if you're watching and you have to step away, or if you missed this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Community Challenge website. I now want to take a moment to introduce you to the incredible team here at AARP who leads our AARP Community Challenge program. Tracy Bertram, who's with us in studio today and will be helping to answer your questions live. Rebecca Delphia, who you'll see in Q&A responding to your questions. Evie Owen, who is here in studio with me as well and will provide information on how to use the application platform and answer your questions. And finally, Lisa Van Buskirk, who will be responding to your questions today and via email. Now, since this program was launched in 2017, AARP has awarded $12.7 million through over 1,000 grants in nearly 700 communities across the country. And these communities have a population of over 100 million people. And they have gone to a range of communities. The program supports places of all sizes and makeup, including rural communities where about 4 in 10 grants have gone, urban places where another 4 in 10 of our grants have gone, and suburban communities where about 2 in 10 grants have gone in the past. Now, communities with populations as small as several hundred residents have received grants. And while you see this distribution on the screen, please know that it is not a predetermined funding allocation. These percentages vary from year to year, but it's fairly consistent across. And another fairly consistent feature is the size of our grants. While this varies year to year, since 2017, our average grant amount has been just under $12,000, and over 8 in 10 grants have been under $20,000. Now, while AARP reserves the right to award projects of really any dollar amount, the largest grant that's ever been awarded by the AARP Community Challenge was $50,000. And despite the varying ranges of size, we know that all of these projects are leading to real, tangible changes in the community. In the first 5 years of the program, 800 grantees installed over 25,000 permanent and temporary improvements in communities and created or delivered 3,500 resources, activities, or programs. To give you an example, this includes 975 benches that have been placed throughout America, 856 garden beds built and designed for people of varying abilities and age, and 157 crosswalks improved. There are so many more, and we hope you'll visit aarp.org/communitychallenge to learn a little bit more about them. Now, those real improvements are important, but we also know that they lead to outcomes. As we look at the first 4 years of the program, grantees shared back with us a lot of really great news. We heard that nearly half of grants helped the grantee leverage additional funds and support from public, private, and philanthropic partners and funders. And 8 in 10 grants help the grantee advance and overcome change and overcome policy barriers. And we know that all of the grants that have been awarded have helped grantees gain greater awareness, engagement with their efforts, and attract and develop new partnerships. Now, from the start of the program, it's been designed to lead to this kind of change and jumpstart action. And one critical ingredient to that is the quick action timeline. So you'll see up on the screen, we have a very fast pace for this program. There's 8 weeks for applications, and a reminder that that application window that we're in right now closes on March 15th. There are additional 8 weeks for kind of judging and selection and paperwork to ensure that grantees are ready when it's time to launch. And then when we announce grantees toward the end of June, there are 5 months for projects to get started and completed. Now, as we look ahead, we know this program is open to a wide range of players. It's open to 501c3, C4, and C6 nonprofits. And we know that nonprofit organizations must be recognized by the IRS in order to receive funds. We'll get to some of the specifics there later, I'm sure, in the Q&A. Government entities are also able to receive grants under the AARP Community Challenge. And other types of organizations can be considered on a case-by-case basis. Now, I want to note that there are several types of projects that are not eligible for funding under the Community Challenge. And these are all listed on our website at aarp.org/communitychallenge. A few of those examples are going to be partisan, political, or election-related activities. Another example is the acquisition of land or buildings. Others include the promotion of a for-profit entity and/or its products and services. There's several other examples, and as I mentioned, those eligibility requirements and knowing what is eligible and what's not eligible are available on aarp.org/communitychallenge. Now, with all the different eligibility and tangible changes we see, projects are going to be judged on a very consistent criteria. Roughly 60% of the weight in that scoring is going to go to the impact that projects are going to see. What is it going to bring to the community? 30% are going to go toward execution and really confirming and assuring that grantees have the assets in place to execute the grant as they laid it out within the timeline. And 10% is going to really focus on innovation. What are the new ideas that you have that you want to put in place? So with that kind of backdrop and the setting, I'm going to now highlight a few of the new exciting opportunities this year. So this year we're really excited to accept applications across 3 opportunities, with 2 of them being new. So first, we have our traditional flagship grants. Second, we have a new opportunity this year for capacity building micro grants. And finally, we have a new opportunity for the AARP Community Challenge this year called demonstration grants. We're going to talk a little bit about each of these in specifics now. So first, we're going to talk about the flagship grants, which what these are is they are continuing the successful Community Challenge grant program that was first launched in 2017. These are going to offer a broad opportunity for communities to apply for funding and to be creative across these categories that you see on the screen. So in addition, it's going to focus on public places, transportation, housing, diversity, equity, and inclusion, civic engagement, community health and economic empowerment. And this year there are 2 new categories: digital connections and community resilience. Now, in the past, these grants have ranged from several $100s for these smaller, short-term activities to tens of thousands of dollars for some of those larger projects. That slide that we showed earlier with the distribution is a great overview of those projects. Now, the next opportunity we want to highlight is a new one for this year: demonstration grants. And what these grants are going to do is they're going to encourage the replication of promising local efforts in 2 categories. The first is advancing solutions that are going to build capacity toward transportation systems change. These grants are going to range from approximately $30,000 to $50,000 each. And we're very pleased that this grant category is made possible with funding support provided by Toyota Motor North America. Now, the second category here is focused on implementing accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, design competitions that are going to increase community understanding of the benefits of accessory dwelling units and encourage implementation of ADU policies. These grants are going to range from the $10,000 to $15,000 range for each project. Now, we're really excited about this new opportunity for funding of demonstration projects, and I'm also equally pleased to offer another opportunity for capacity building micro grants. So this new grant opportunity is going to combine a few things. First, $25,000 grants that are going to bring along additional resources from AARP and our partners, 880 Cities and America Walks. Participation in this kind of capacity building and technical assistance opportunities are a critical component of the grant. And with that, we'll talk a little bit more about this in more detail in the Q&A, but there are 2 categories under this funding. First, grantees can implement walk audit assessments to enhance safety and walkability with support from America Walks, and this will be using the AARP Walk Audit Toolkit. All of these resources are available on our website if you have any questions. Second, grantees will get to work on to start or grow a community garden with support from our partner, 880 Cities. And this will also be using the AARP publication, Creating Community Gardens for People of All Ages. As I mentioned, more information and examples of these categories are available on www.aarp.org/communitychallenge. So really encourage you to look there and find a little bit more information. And if you're interested in learning about these 2 capacity building microgrant opportunities in particular, there are 2 webinars coming up that will give you a deeper dive. First, on February 14th at 2 p.m., you can join America Walks for an overview of the value of a walk audit. And second, on February 16th at 2 p.m., you can join 880 Cities for more information on advancing community gardens and some tools and resources there. Registration information is being dropped in the chat now, so take a look there. or you can visit aarp.org/community challenge, and there's some big yellow boxes there you can click to learn a little bit more. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Evie Owen to walk through a few important pieces of information related to the Community Challenge. Evie, thanks for being here. I'm going to kick it over to you now.
Thanks, Mike. All right, all applications must be submitted through the online portal at aarp.org/community challenge. I know Mike's given that out a few times. That is where everything will run through. There's lots and lots of information there. The deadline is March 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, no emailed or printed applications can be accepted. So once you go there, you click on the yellow button at the top of the page, and that will take you to our online portal called Open Water. Once there, you can either start a new application by selecting a grant opportunity from the red buttons on the right side, or you can view your existing applications, either those that are complete or in progress, by clicking on the My Account button in the top right of the menu bar. Once logged in, you'll see another menu on the left-hand side with options to view all your applications, view only complete applications, and then there's a few more options there. If you click on Complete, you'll have the ability to view, edit, copy, withdraw, or even print your applications. If you don't see a completed application that should be there, a 2022 application, for instance, one you did last year, just click on the blue words at the bottom that say Show Full History. And of course, if you have any problems, just shoot us an email at communitychallenge@aarp.org and we will get you sorted. Best of luck. And now I'm going to kick it back over to Mike for the rest of our program.
Thanks, Evie. And now I'm really pleased to bring in some other voices to the conversation. We're going to have the good fortune of hearing from a few previous grantees under the AARP Community Challenge. But first, we're going to share a video from one of our 2021 grantees, Apple Shop in Whitesburg, Kentucky. Please enjoy this video, which lasts about 3 minutes. Afterwards, we'll get to hear from Annie Jane Cotton of Apple Shop.
Whitesburg, even though small, it's a thriving little community full of arts and culture. It's become one of the most booming little towns in this side of Eastern Kentucky.
Today we had a ribbon cutting kind of community celebration for the dedication of this new covered bridge here, and also for the completion of the downtown section of the Tanglewood Trail. The Tanglewood Trail is a 3-mile trail. It goes through the kind of heart of downtown Whitesburg. It's an at-grade, accessible walking trail right through town.
A walking track like this is very important to our community, especially for our older citizens, because it gives them a safe, lighted place where the pavement is even, where they can go out and get some exercise, get some sunshine.
The AARP Community Challenge grant covered the blacktopping of about a little over half a mile of the last section of the trail. It covered 4 new benches spread out along that section. It covered the creation of unique stencil art that's kind of sprinkled along the trail by a local artist, and those are native flowers and plants. On the west end of the trail, the AARP grant helped us to get new signs for a crosswalk, letting drivers know that this is a place where people cross. The big vision is to extend it another 6 miles up to the top of Pine Mountain, which is here above town, and connect it to this long-distance hiking trail called the Pine Mountain Trail.
AARP's Community Challenge grants are investing in these projects like the Tanglewood Trail. They are delivering opportunities for communities to build their walkability, increase their livability, and make their communities great places to live for every age.
It can help the town thrive and develop by connecting all of our different businesses together. It connects one end of town to the other, and a lot of people who do not drive have access now.
People are very excited to use Tanglewood Trail. It's just another way of tying a healthy community together with fresh foods and physical activity in community.
With AARP's help, with the Tourism Commission's help, with the city's help, we hope that this trail inspires all of us to keep working together, to keep collaborating, and to create new public spaces, create new parks, create new art, and to work together also to redevelop vacant buildings. This is one component of an effort of collaboration across these organizations to build a better community overall.
Well, that was an incredible overview of that project and of Whitesburg and the community there. Now we're very pleased to have Annie Jane Cotton of Apple Shop here with us to answer some questions about that project. Welcome, Annie Jane.
Hey, y'all. How are you doing today?
Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. So Annie Jane, we're going to dive right in. I think we saw a little bit about the project there in that video, but can you take a few minutes and maybe tell us a bit about what made this project come together and how the new community asset has helped serve residents since you completed it?
Absolutely. One of the largest benefits for us, as Mayor Tiffany Kraft mentioned, is the ability to connect residents of our community across town. And so we have access now to banking and food, restaurants, our farmers market, for folks who are older who don't necessarily have transportation access. So that's one of the biggest ones. And that ties really directly into our community health piece, because that also the trail connects to the site of our farmers market. And so that allows older residents to use tokens that they gain by walking certain amounts of the trail to spend those tokens at the farmers market, and increases community health access to healthy food. So that's a big deal. The other piece is the revitalization of our downtown and connecting downtown Whitesburg to things like the Tanglewood Trail, to things like the Pine Mountain Trail, which is a larger trail that connects a large swath of our outdoor recreation spaces. So, and I think that for me, one of the things that made the project really special was the ability to connect with so many different partners across many lines, like economic lines. We had community leaders, we had politicians, we had local government, all working together to create this really beautiful benefit for our community.
That's fantastic. Annie Jane, thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like it was a great opportunity to connect to existing resources, to incent some healthy behavior, and build new partnerships. So really, really fantastic to see after we just saw it in action on that video. Now, everyone, and Annie Jane, please stick around because we're going to have more questions for her shortly. But first, we're now going to show a second video from a 2022 grantee, Transit Alliance Miami. Their Community Challenge project was supported with funding from Toyota Motor North America last year. Now this video lasts about 4 minutes, and afterwards we'll be joined by Mark Merwitzer of the Transit Alliance Miami, and then we'll have a conversation with Annie Jane and Mark. Please enjoy this video.
The Transit Alliance, we are a nonprofit that was founded in 2015. We're dedicated to making it easier to get around Miami without the need for a car. And we're advocating for things like walkable streets, better public transportation, and better housing that's closer together to transit to be able to move people across the county more easily. And also, number one, provide more destinations. And number two, make sure that streets are safe for everyone and mobile for everyone.
Today we convened seniors of the V Living community and walked them through an education and tech training program to make them aware of the opportunities that exist countywide for them to access transit and connect them to places that they typically go.
The three main things that we're educating people on here. Number one is freebie. We want to provide an on-demand, so like Uber or Lyft, door-to-door service. You're getting picked up here at the independent care facility, and you can get to the door of anywhere in Aventura for free.
I actually used Freebie, and they picked me up with my scooter, which amazed me that it was a car, not even your van. And they picked me up at Aventura Hospital, and they brought me here with the scooter. And I thought that was wonderful because you can barely get a taxi today that can handle a scooter.
Let's say a senior here wants to go anywhere else in the county other than Aventura. We would like to make sure they have free access to the entire county-wide transportation system. Back in 2002, the county created a program to give seniors here free access to the buses and the trains here. But unfortunately, because there's a sign up for it, not everyone has enrolled who's eligible. So today we just had dozens of enrollees to come by to that table and sign up. And our third service, STS, while it is also a door-to-door service, instead of being, let's say, in Aventura, you have to just call it a day in advance, and they will take you anywhere in the county that you'd like to go.
I've used STS for a long time and Freebie since it started. I enjoy using them because they're friendly and I feel safe.
The AARP Community Challenge Grant Program provides funding for the My Transit, My City Transit Alliance education and tech training campaign. And that consists of a series of outreach events. We'll be holding workshops throughout the county in different senior communities. It also includes providing this tech training component, helping our seniors learn how to use the Freebie app and also the Go Connect transit app.
We know that sometimes a major barrier to people exploring and utilizing new transportation services is that they may not understand how to use the program, they may not be aware the program exists, or they may have a technological issue. So this program is able to do all three and create a win-win situation for community residents.
So the hope is that through a program like this, we create awareness tied to that program, and also that we increase the opportunities for seniors to live very active, healthy lives, to live engaged lives, and to really age in place in the city that they love.
So this is going to change lives. People here who previously did not know about this service, that will be able to get them anywhere in the county or anywhere in Aventura, they're now going to have access to this service. They're going to be able to visit their grandchild whenever they'd like to. Now they're going to be able to go to the grocery store without having to call the independent service here. There's so many opportunities for them, and we want to make sure people have the ability to live independently.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that overview of the fantastic work that Transit Alliance Miami is doing down in Florida. Now we're pleased to be joined by Mark Merwitzer of the Transit Alliance Miami, who you just saw in that video. Welcome, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing a little bit. Now, Mark, based on that video, it sounds like there was a lot of existing transportation options that were already in the community. Can you share a little bit about how the participants, some of who we saw in the video, the folks who went through that training, how have they been able to more comfortably use the existing transit since the grant was finished?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you all very much for the grant last year. It has changed so many lives, and I just wanted to focus for a second on why we decided to do this project. As seniors in our community age, many of them unfortunately lose their ability to drive as their primary way of getting around. And that's because of the way we've designed cities, and not being able to drive is just such an isolating event. So we wanted to make sure that seniors across Miami-Dade County had the resources that they needed to know how they can get around the county easily with our transit services that we can provide. So some of the things that we provided in our education to each of our seniors included everything from the second a senior citizen left their house to when they returned home after going out. So that included everything from getting them first and last mile transportation to the bus stop or transit stop, which included Freebie. The other item included the Golden Passport program, where seniors are able to ride transit anywhere in Miami-Dade County without fares. So that is a huge program because that removes any kind of financial burden on our seniors from being able to get around our county. We did signups on the spot. And lastly, we wanted to provide seniors the education as to what buses are available, what trains are available, and how they can get around the county. And most importantly, how the transit system is going to be improving in their area once the Better Bus Network, one of the programs that we spearheaded to increase frequency of transit service countywide, so that they know all about the transit system. And I like to say they would have a PhD in transit by the time they go through our program. So we're really excited to continue this work, and we're extremely grateful to have that opportunity.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Mark. And it sounds like those folks that you're training, yes, they'll have their PhD in transit by the end, but it also sounds like, more importantly, you were giving them new options that they could get around the community with and saving some dollars along the way. So it sounds like some real impact that you were bringing to folks. Now, Mark, I have some more questions for you, but I also want to welcome Annie Jane Cotton from Whitesburg back into the conversation. We're going to ask a few questions of both of you, and then for those of you tuning in, We're going to get to your questions very soon. Now, this is a question for both of you. As you crafted your plans for and then you implemented your project, how did older adults fit into your thinking? Jane, let's start with you and then let's go to you, Mark.
Hi, thank you. That's a great question. I think that for us, because like many rural communities, our community is primarily an aging population. So for us, every step along the way, we ask community input and community emphasis on the planning and execution of the project. We intentionally involved older folks in our community through the entire process. And also, many older citizens in our community are the primary beneficiary of some of the benefits of the program. So it was very important to us that we both had them at the table for the whole process through, but also we're asking for their input in decision making around those ideas that we were putting forward.
Thanks, Jane. I love that thinking about engaging older adults along the way to get their input, but also acknowledging that they're probably the primary beneficiaries from a lot of this work. Mark, do you have anything to add from your project's perspective?
Yeah, so the core focus of this project was to empower seniors to get around without having to depend on their car. Seniors who were previously unaware of the different programs that are available to them now had the education and knowledge to actually use the programs that the county provides to them. It's one thing to have these programs in place, but to have the awareness and actually have people use those programs is a whole different ballgame that requires community education or requires support. And oftentimes a lot of people might have some anxiety getting around a new system. So we wanted to make sure that those concerns were addressed, and also just make sure that seniors knew how to get around easily. So that's the most important thing.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. It's a little bit of the importance of anticipating those questions, just providing a little bit of information to build that confidence. Now, we're going to be getting to live audience questions pretty soon, but before we do that, I have one final question for the both of you before we get there. Can you take a moment and maybe share a little bit of advice? I'm sure people are waiting for this. Share a little bit of advice for people who are thinking about applying for the Community Challenge today. What is this something that you would, if you had one little thing that you could share, what's a tip that you would share? Mark, let's start with you and then go to you, Annie Jane.
Yeah, of course. Well, it goes back to what we mentioned earlier and what you even mentioned is tying it back to how we're improving the lives of people in our community, especially seniors. So just having that core focus and figuring out ways to provide services that previously are not available or would not otherwise be available without the funding, but also you can use this opportunity to also build bridges with other organizations who otherwise would not have thought about seniors in their course of work or any kind of other work plans. So it's keeping both of those things in mind and building a awareness towards seniors towards your project, and just making sure that everyone has the ability to serve as much as possible.
Love that. I think we know older adults are critical to the success and future of our communities. And when you think about older adults and you build communities around their needs, you're going to reach and support everybody. So Mark, that was spot on and really great advice for folks. Annie Jane, do you have anything you'd like to share from your perspective?
Yeah, I would just say that one of the important pieces is building those partnerships and making sure that those partnerships set you up for possible future work together, so that you're building something not only in your project that will last, but also that those community relationships that will last as well.
Love that. And I think that that's going to make an application stronger, and it's also going to make the execution and sustainability of the projects that you're implementing stronger beyond the grant. So that is just fantastic advice. Now, I want to thank you both for taking the time to share a little bit more about your projects. And I know you'll be sticking around because I'm sure our viewers today are going to have lots of questions for you. And on that note, it's now time to get to your questions. So remember, you can ask your question at any time, and I'm sure many of you already have, by using the Q&A button on the bottom toolbar of Zoom. So as we get to them, now I'm very pleased to introduce another fantastic colleague of mine, Tracy Bertram, who is going to be facilitating your questions. Tracy, welcome.
Hi, thanks Mike and Evie. We'll jump right in. We have lots of great questions. Mike, this first one's for you from Kate. what do you mean by tangible benefits? We talk about tangible benefits a lot. Does that mean physical changes to a community has to take place or is prioritized, or are there things that might seem more intangible, and what could that look like?
That's a great question. And I think generally what we're going to talk about there are probably going to be tangible physical things, but that does not just mean physical things. It doesn't just mean benches. It doesn't just mean improved crosswalks. It can also mean programs that are going to meaningfully impact the lives of people. I think you just saw Mark talking about the project that Transit Alliance Miami did, which is educating and providing that tangible value to people in the form of information, training to help them build that confidence, and ultimately connecting them to more resources. So when we say tangible, that's what we mean. We mean tangibly and in real terms impacting and improving the lives of people in communities who are going to be receiving these grants.
Great. Next question is from Hugo. He wants to know, is there a size limitation when it comes to community gardens, especially since that's its own subcategory? Is there a strict definition of community garden you're looking for, or is that open?
That's another great question there. And what I would do is I would actually point you to the recently released resource that AARP just produced and released last week, Community Gardens for People of All Ages. And that really gets to the crux of your question, which is community gardens are going to be different for every person and every user and every neighborhood depending on your goals. So there are no size limitations when you think about how big a community garden is, and also uses. Community gardens might be used to produce food, or they might really intentionally be used as a programming space or other opportunities. When you think about the size, though, there is a focus on those grants. They are micro grants. They're going to be $2,500, but you're also going to have the opportunity to connect with peers throughout the year and learn from our expert partners at 880 Cities about some of those engagement and community building techniques that we talked about.
Thank you, Evie. We have a question about the application from several folks. They want to know if they can edit it once they submit it. What about after the deadline? Can they still go back and edit then, or does it need to be before the deadline?
Great questions. I'm so glad somebody asked that. So you can edit your application up until the deadline, up until March 15th at 5 p.m. And you can edit it even if you've already submitted it. You know, you could have submitted it on the first day that we opened, and you can still go back and edit it for as long as you want up until that deadline. You will not be able to edit it anymore once the deadline closes on March 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern. You'll still be able to see it, and you'll still be able to print it if you want, but you just won't be able to edit it anymore.
Thanks. Mike, the next question's for you. Do transportation demonstration grants also need to be completed by the deadline of November 30th? Similarly, we've gotten several questions. If your grant project is part of a larger overall project, does the whole thing need to be completed on time, or can just the portion that this grant's funding be completed on time?
Those are great questions, and I'll kind of answer them in two parts. First, there is the November 30th deadline for project completion. Applies to all three grant opportunities: the demonstration grants, the flagship grants, and the capacity building micro grants. We understand that folks will encounter some difficulties, maybe with supply chain or other things throughout the process. And if we get to that point, then we're very open to having conversations and discussing contingencies there. But from the get-go, the deadline for project completion is November 30th, 2023. Now, to answer the second question, the way I would answer that is for the Community Challenge Grant, it needs to be applied to some real tangible deliverables that will be completed by November 30th. So that may mean if you're thinking of a larger park or a larger kind of Main Street update, that might mean that you kind of purchase and get the benches installed, knowing that you have a multi-year plan to improve that Main Street, and there's going to be a lot of steps along the way. And what we've seen is that the grants that folks receive through the Community Challenge can help build that momentum. So maybe you do have that 5-year vision and you want to attract other funding and other support. And at times, maybe that $10,000 grant to take that first step can help you realize that vision and attract that other funding and support to get you there.
Okay, Mike, another Mike from United Church Homes has a follow-up to that. So are grants for one time only, or could they be extended for multiple years? Or if we have a multiple year project, could we apply this year and possibly come back and apply again in year 2?
It's a great question, Mike. And what I would say is there have been several grantees. If you look on AARP's website, aarp.org/community challenge, or if you go to a tool that we have called our Livable Communities Map, that's aarp.org/livable map, you can see that there are several grantees who have received funds in multiple years, some in consecutive years, some in different years. By and large, grantees are going to be different year to year, but if there is a compelling project, if it scores highly and makes sense to support and kind of shows that case of advancing and building the case for longer term change, grantees have received support in multiple years, some in back-to-back years.
Thank you. Next question is for Annie Jane from Apple Shop. We have several people who have trail projects, either revamping current trails that need upgraded or possibly starting new trails or making them more mobile or safe. So they were wondering if you could talk about the trail project a little and any benefits you saw. Was there increased usership or any other value that you received as a result?
Absolutely. I think that especially with using part of our grant to grade the trail and pave the trail, we saw high levels of increased usage. So it was more accessible for folks. You could use the trail if you were in a wheelchair, you needed a walker, there was a lot more access for people. So that was a really big deal and a big part of our goal. Additionally, I do think that it connected several different community level projects, such as our farmers market and our medical facilities have a pharmacy program. So they're encouraging people to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. And because the trail intersected with our farmers market location, we saw a really big increase in that program as well.
Thank you. And Mark, from Miami Transit Alliance, we had several people asking that you're one of many transit providers in your community, and you touched on all the partners, and they'd like to hear you speak about that for another moment. Did you have to get special buy-in or input or make effort as you were out there doing the education piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So the program involved us reaching out to all sorts of different organizations across Miami-Dade County. One of them was assisted living and independent living facilities across the county so we could actually host the events. We've reached out to different transit providers such as Miami-Dade County Transit. We've also reached out to Freebie, which is the provider that you saw in the video that got people from door to door. And we've just reached out to all sorts of other different organizations across the county to see what their buy-in is. We've dropped off some flyers at just different locations across the county, like private businesses and medical facilities, so that they are aware of the services available. So it required doing quite a bit of outreach, but when we told them who the target audience was of this and what our actual goal was to accomplish, they were very enthusiastic to support us, which was part of the great part about this grant. So we're very grateful for all of our partners.
Thanks, Mark. Mike, this next question's for you from Judy Sizemore. She has a question about the use of fiscal agents. If an organization doesn't have their IRS recognized nonprofit tax status yet, can they use a fiscal agent and apply with a sponsor?
The short answer to that is yes, you can, and grantees over the course of the 7 years of the program have used that strategy multiple times. So just note that as you're putting in your application. And once we get to the kind of selection process, there'll be conversations about, funding and who's receiving what. But I would just be sure to note that within your application, both in the kind of organizational profile as well as the description of what's actually being achieved and executed through your grant.
Okay, great. And Evie, someone is asking, Megan from Maine wants to know, and several others, are matches encouraged, required? What about matches?
So funding matches are not required. There is a space on the application to include it if you do have it, so please do let us know there, but it is absolutely not required. But we always like to know if you do.
Very helpful, thank you. Mike, we have a question from Marissa about demonstration projects. In this new category, we referred to local efforts being replicated. Do those local efforts to be replicated need to be pre-existing and already in place, or could the funding catalyze local efforts that could then be replicated?
Yes. So I think what we're looking for with the AARP Community Challenge is to jumpstart change, advance change, and jumpstart new ideas. So as I said, the simple answer to your question is yes. But in general, what we're looking for is at the community level, if you're, what the challenge will typically not fund is just kind of ongoing programming, right? So if you're saying we're able to reach 100 people today and we can reach 200 people tomorrow, what we're typically going to provide, what we're typically going to score highly throughout the community challenge are things that are going to be new, innovative, test a concept, build on a concept. So maybe you had a proof of concept and you know with this you're going to be able to scale it. So in short, again, both of those types of projects would be eligible. It's really in the specifics of how you describe and the impact of them and how they're being executed. I'll note there are loads of examples on aarp.org/community challenge. If you go on there, there's an attachment that kind of provides some specific types of examples under each of these opportunities and the categories within. So check those out. And if you have any other questions about the specifics of your project, we're going to have more questions today, but also you can email communitychallenge@aarp.org and we'll get back to you very quickly.
Okay, Mike, another one for you from Anthony. This is a question about vehicle eligibility. While vehicles aren't allowed, what about e-bikes or rickshaws or pedal devices?
Yes, you're correct that vehicle purchases are not allowed, but e-bikes, rickshaws, e-trikes, those are eligible under the AARP Community Challenge. So if your project has one of those within it, please think about submitting an application.
Okay, this next question is for Mark and Annie Jane both. Mark, we'll start with you. A few people have asked if you had to pivot at all. You're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of partners, and things don't always go your way. And did you feel you had the flexibility to adapt and customize, overcome? And then after you respond, we'd love to hear from Annie Jane, because their community had devastating flooding. And they had to really rise above, literally and figuratively, and we'd love her to speak to some of that, having to pivot on the ground.
So I remember reaching out to about 40 independent/assisted living areas across Miami-Dade County, and only a handful of them got back to us. And one of them was VI, which you saw in the video. But we wanted to do more than just a handful that reached back out to us. So we've actually decided to pivot a little bit and partner with the county library system, where we hosted a handful of other community workshops and trainings for seniors. And we know that libraries are a central part of the community in so many places. It provides seniors with literature to read, and it's also just a place that's frequented by our seniors. So we thought it would be a very convenient place. So we reached out to the library system here in Dade County, and they provided us event space, and we were able to market the event from that point forward, which was great because we were able to expand our partnership with the county.
Hi, yeah. Well, so initially as we were executing the project, we did end up having to pivot a couple times just because materials were so difficult to obtain at different points. But then, of course, after the large-scale flooding that hit our area last July, devastating flooding in our area, unlike anything we'd seen in what they're calling 1,000-year floods. And so the trail itself and the improvements that we had made, we definitely had to sort of take stock of what was damaged, what was not. We were so grateful to see that our beautiful covered bridge that you saw in that video was not ruined. We still have our covered bridge, but we did have to, remake a few of the signs and paint some of the stenciling.
Thank you both. Evie, we have a question about the application. There's a space to upload materials or collateral supporting letters or design plans and maps. Is there something we're looking for there? Is that required, or is there a limit on how many things we can upload?
Another good question. This is just like matching funds. It's not required that you upload anything, but we do provide that space for you. The application will only let you upload one document though, so if you have multiples, if you want to include multiple pictures or pictures as well as letters of support, PDFs, we do ask that you combine that all into one document, one PDF for instance, and upload it there.
Mike, the next question's for you. Jenny H. is wondering, can you clarify what's meant by ineligibility criteria of sponsoring other organizations, events, or activities? Does this mean you can't sponsor an event, or could funding be used for your own event? Could you just speak about that for a moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what I would say to that is, what wouldn't be funded or kind of eligible under the Community Challenge is an event, organizations holding an open streets festival or a health fair, and folks are applying to use those grant funds to appear as a sponsor of that event with no real tangible community improvements or tangible engagements. That said, we understand that events are a critical part of community engagement. So events and hosting kickoff events and bringing people together are absolutely eligible and encouraged as part of the grants. It's more just traditional kind of sponsorship of an event without any tangible engagement or tangible community improvement that comes about as a result of it is not going to be eligible for funding.
All right, thank you. Evie, Darcy would like to know if one organization could submit multiple project proposals. And also, the second part of that question is, must you be an AARP member or a member of the network of age-friendly states and communities to apply?
Really, really good questions. The first one, you can submit as many applications as you would like. You can also submit applications across all the funding opportunities. You can submit 3 in microgrants or 2 in flagship. You could submit as many as you want. You can edit them all under your My Account in Open Water. And the second part of the question, no, you do not have to be an AARP member. No, you don't have to be a member of the Age Friendly Network or any of our other membership organizations. That is not required. And yeah, no, you are free no matter whether you're a member or not.
Thanks, Evie. Mike, the next question is from Simon. He wants to know if there's preference given to a community based on the size of its population. For instance, are cities more apt to get grant funding than smaller towns or villages, or vice versa?
That's a great question, and one that really makes a lot of sense to ask. And I'm pleased to share that, no, this is not just a grant program for big cities that are doing all the traditional kind of civic innovation work. This is a program that is available for any community of any size, no matter where you are on the path to becoming more livable for residents of all ages. As we shared earlier, roughly 4 in 10 of our past grants have gone to communities that self-identify as rural, and several grantees have had populations in the hundreds. That said, we've also provided grantees to organizations that are in the city and county of Los Angeles or New York City. So it is a grant program that is responsive to what your priorities are and what your community wants to address regardless of your size. It is scored on a consistent criteria that does not weigh community size or location.
Thank you for that answer. Evie, the next question's for you. Joanne is asking about branding, and we're getting lots of questions about signage. Does AARP provide those signs? Do people order their own? Can they include that in the budget? Speak about branding, please.
So we get lots of questions about branding throughout the whole process. So a few things. If you are awarded a grant, you will get a big toolkit with lots of information about branding, our logo, signage, tons of examples from past projects. You'll also get information about how to acknowledge us, include that on your signs. We don't have a specific way you're supposed to include the logo or AARP in your project because every project is so different. So we just ask that you do include it where it's possible. You can include that in your grant budget. You can include it in your ask, for signage and things like that. We do not provide a sign or a banner or anything like that if you are awarded a grant, because again, every project is so different. We wouldn't be able to give one that would work for everybody. So we just ask that you work it in where it's possible.
Okay, Mike. So a few people have asked, this one's from Emily Brown. I would like to apply for a demonstration project, but mine might only cost $10,000. But if it's transportation systems change, would it still go under that category? Or might we take a ADU or transportation project and apply for it under the flagship? What helps people discern between which opportunity they should apply for?
Yeah, that is a really great question. And I think some of it is really going to depend on the specifics of what you're doing, right? I don't think that the size should completely discourage you from applying for that demonstration grant. If, as you look at the examples and read the criteria, you think you're a great fit and you really only need to do a $10,000 project, that is certainly possible. You could also apply, as Evie mentioned earlier, for multiple opportunities under multiple opportunities. So if you think it makes sense under a demonstration grant, it could also be applied for under a flagship opportunity as well. But again, this is really going to depend on the specifics of what you're doing. And if you do have any more specific questions related to that, just encourage y'all to email communitychallenge@aarp.org.
All right, thank you. It seems like we have time for one final question. For the ones we didn't respond to live, we will keep answering in the chat, or you can email the Community Challenge inbox and we'll respond in writing. But for our last live question to you, Mike, we have a question from Joseph, and he's like, going into this webinar, I understood that grants would be used to pay for things that we could install or create or deliver, but it seems like there's a lot more value than what we could just buy and purchase and put in the ground. It sounds like raising awareness or additional funds or developing relationships beyond the project itself is something I hadn't anticipated. Could you talk about that opportunity for a moment?
That is a fantastic question. And I think as you heard from Annie Jane and from Mark, there's that on the front and the back end, right? I think what's important, and we know that projects that are going to have those partnerships in place, have those conversations had at the beginning, they're probably going to be the things that are going to score high. They're also things that are more likely to lead to that longer term change. But don't let that discourage you if you don't have all of that in place, because we know that just the act of applying for and receiving and announcing this grant that you're implementing in your community can help bring those other folks to the table. So really encourage you to think short and long term. There are the tangible elements of each of these that you want to implement, but also think about the partners you want to bring on board throughout the process to ensure that that $10,000 grant can help you generate additional support and funding to make it a multi-year project, or even make it a $50,000, $60,000 project at the end of the day. Now with that, I want to thank Tracy. Thank you so much for sharing the questions. Evie, thank you for being here with us in the studio. And Annie Jane and Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to share your insights with folks who are interested in applying, and most importantly, for the work that you're doing in your communities and have done through the Community Challenge Grant. Thank you all again for being here. Now, before we wrap, I just want to note you should see a brief poll pop up on your screen. So please take a moment and answer those questions and tell us a little bit about how this webinar went and if it was helpful to you. And while you're doing that, again, I want to thank our panelists from Appalshop and Transit Alliance Miami, as well as Evie and Tracy. While we got to a lot of your questions today, there are far more opportunities to stay in touch that you'll see on the screen. First, you can email us at communitychallenge@aarp.org. You'll get a response to your email there fairly quickly. You can also find loads more resources about the AARP Community Challenge and, importantly, apply on our website at aarp.org/communitychallenge. Finally, we hope that you'll take a moment to also sign up for the free weekly AARP Livable Communities e-newsletter at aarp.org/livablesubscribe. If you can't get there, you can also text Livable to 50757. This is the best way to stay up to date on everything that AARP is doing on livable communities and be the first to know about new resources like the Community Challenge or some of the publications and resources that we mentioned earlier. Now with that, I just want to remind folks that this program has been recorded and it will be available on the Community Challenge website as well, so you can share that with colleagues who maybe didn't get a chance to tune in today. And with that, it's now time to close. I want to thank you again for joining us today to learn more about this opportunity and remind you the deadline to apply is March 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope to see your applications soon. Thanks again for joining us and have a great day.